Hey guys, today we have some of the best tips and hidden features for the awesome DJI Avata. Let's start with one of those lesser known features that can make your video so much smoother. It can even make a beginner like me look like a pro. I'm talking about gyro flow. With the DJI Avata, we have 3 ways to stabilize our video. And the last is kind of hidden, but you really should know about it because it is incredible. The first 2 we can select straight from the settings menu. Rocksteady combines electronic image stabilization with complex algorithms to smooth out your video. And compared to it being turned off, this does a great job at removing jitters and shakes. Horizon Steady works to always maintain a level horizon no matter what kind of crazy moves you're doing with your drone. Just look at the difference it makes in this comparison. But if you want the smoothest video possible, then you want to turn the EIS setting off. Yes, you heard me, turn it off. When you turn EIS off in the Avata settings, the drone will store gyro data to your video, and this allows you to use a software called Gyro Flow to get super smooth video. Simply download Gyro Flow, I'll put a link in the description down below, import your video, and boom, the video is now super smooth. You can adjust settings such as field of view and smoothness, and once you're done, all you have to do is hit export. I was super impressed with how smooth Gyro Flow can make your Avata video look, and if you haven't tried it yet, then I recommend you give it a go. Now, if you're having trouble keeping the Avata lined up on a subject, flying straight along ridge lines, or even through narrow gaps for example, then you will want to turn this next feature on. Trust me, as a beginner in manual mode, I know how tough it can be. In settings in the camera menu, turn on center point. This adds a small point in the center of the video you see in the goggles, and this can be really useful for keeping the Avata lined up and flying straight. Do you post most of your epic FPV clips to social media such as Instagram or TikTok, but don't want to lose so much of the video when you crop it into that vertical ratio? Well, I have a really awesome top tip for you. When you change the Avata's video resolution to 2.7K, you can enable a 4:3 aspect ratio in the camera settings. This square format fits more what the drone sees into the top and bottom of the frame, which means when it comes time to crop to a 9:16 ratio, you don't lose as much from the sides. Now, unfortunately, you can't use this ratio in 4K mode, but if you're exporting to Instagram or TikTok, you're probably uploading in 1080 by 1920 anyway to avoid compression, so this trick works great. If most of your clips end up in them platforms, then why not give the 4:3 aspect ratio a try? Now for another feature on the Avata that you might not know about. Up until now, you might have been going into the settings menu, then camera, to adjust things like resolution, auto ISO limit, stabilization settings, and then further into the advanced camera settings menu to change the color profile. But you can actually change these settings on the fly much faster. By swiping up, you will see camera settings such as mode, ISO, shutter speed, and white balance. But did you know that if you keep swiping right, you will reveal more options for changing things such as aspect ratio, resolution, field of view, stabilization mode, and color profile. This is a much quicker way to change these settings on the fly. Super handy if you change your color profile a lot, and I guarantee you will use this menu more now that you know them options are in there. If you're learning to fly manually in the simulator, or you're flying the Avata in real life as a beginner, you might find it hard to fly slowly, that the drone gets away from you very quickly, or that you always seem to be going too fast. That was definitely the case with me until I learned this next tip. Check your gimbal angle. As if it's pointing up, you will be pitching the drone forward more to see the horizon, and even further when you start to fly forward, and this leads to you flying fast. Putting the gimbal to 0, which you can do using the scroll wheel or the snap toggle on the FPV controller, will mean you don't pitch the drone forward as much to see the horizon, leading to you flying slower, and as a beginner have more time to make turns and line up your shot. Coming from flying standard drones, most people use their thumbs on the joystick for control. But you might find that this doesn't give you enough fine control, especially when flying in manual mode. If that's the case, then you should try pinching the joysticks. Pinching the sticks is where you use your finger and thumbs to hold the side off the joystick. This should allow you more accuracy by using 2 fingers to control the joystick instead of just a thumb. This will feel unnatural at first, at least it did for me, especially if you come from flying non-FPV drones, but stick with it and you will see the benefits of using this technique when flying the Avata. On the FPV controller between the C1 and power button, there is an attaching point for a lanyard, and using one has made my life a whole lot easier. Firstly, you don't have to worry about juggling the controller while putting the goggles on, or worrying about dropping the controller while flying FPV, which could be pretty disastrous to say the least. Stick pinching is also easier because more of the FPV controller weight is held around your neck. They are so cheap and really easy to attach, you should definitely pick one up. As a beginner, one of the times you run a risk of crashing when flying manually is landing. Landing in manual mode when you first start is tricky to say the least, and the propellers also don't stop spinning until you double press the start-stop button on the FPV controller. So here is a super easy and foolproof method to make landing so much easier. Whenever you are done flying manually and want to land, just flip the drone into normal mode. This will allow the drone to just hover in place until you're happy. You can easily line up the drone above its landing spot, and then you can hold down on the left stick and the drone will land itself and automatically stop the motors. Much easier. Another less obvious and not well known feature of the Avata is that when you hold the joystick down to land in normal or sport mode, it will sense the area underneath to check if it's suitable for landing. If it detects unsuitable ground underneath, which could be because it's uneven or you're over water, you will get a prompt, the drone will hover in place and it will wait for pilot confirmation. Whereas if the ground is suitable, the drone will land automatically. This should prevent you from ending up in a situation where you accidentally land over water because you have the goggles on and you maybe weren't aware of what was underneath the drone when you were landing, or from landing on an area where the drone might flip over when it lands. If you are over unsuitable ground for landing, such as like this, an area with tall grass or somewhere with sand, and you don't want that going in your drone's propellers, then hand catching is actually really straightforward. Again, with the Avata in normal mode, bring it just in front of you, then you can take your goggles off, grab it on the top and quickly flip it over. Now obviously, just be cautious when using this method, but it can be really useful for situations where the ground isn't suitable for landing and can avoid your drone getting covered in sand, dust or grass. If you have just started flying manually and you've adjusted the screws on the back of the FPV controller to allow the throttle joystick to rest at the bottom of the pad, you may find you get a message saying remote controller control stick air every time you use manual mode. Here are two methods that you can try to stop this message appearing. So this happened to me, and I found that it was because I had screwed the F2 screw on the back of the controller too tight. Simply loosening it by half a turn meant this message didn't appear again. So if you're getting this message, then try loosening your F2 screw. If that doesn't work, you can also try calibrating the controller by going to Settings, Control, Remote Controller, then across to RC Calibration and follow the on-screen steps. Using these two methods, you should be able to stop this error message showing whenever you're flying manually. In the really unfortunate event that you crash your Avata and can't find it, then you might not know that you can plug your phone into your goggles and using the DJI Fly app, go to a section called Find My Drone. This will show you your drone's location on a map, or if the battery has died since the drone crashed, the last recorded position. This should help in your search to locate and recover the drone. If it's still connected, you can press flashing and beeping, and the drone will start making a beeping sound that should help you hear it and find it. With your phone still connected, you can also watch what the goggles are displaying in real time on the phone by going into the DJI Fly app and pressing Fly. This can be useful if you want to show someone with you what you're seeing so that they can watch, or for screen recording what the goggle sees onto your phone. Super useful for going back and seeing what settings you were using for a clip, or for creating tutorials just like this one. One of the most fun things to do with the Avata is to fly low and fast to the ground to get these awesome looking clips. And one of the ways you can make these clips look better is by having motion blur. Just take a look at this comparison. On the left we have a high shutter speed with no motion blur clip, and on the right we have a lower shutter speed with motion blur clip. Motion blur occurs when our shutter speed is set to twice our frame rate. So if you record at 50 FPS, you want a shutter speed of 1/100, and at 60 FPS, you want a shutter speed of 1/120. On a sunny day though, this might mean that your image becomes overexposed and blown out when you use these shutter speeds. So to counter this, we use sunglasses for our drone's camera also known as ND filters. These dark pieces of glass simply clip on over the camera and allow us to run lower shutter speeds and get the motion blur we want. I am currently using this standard day 4-pack which Freewell have very kindly sent me, that includes an ND8, ND16, ND32 and ND64, which should cover you for most situations. They also have a polarizer filter which will reduce glare and unwanted reflections, great if you fly over water a lot, as well as a UV filter which acts as another layer of protective glass in front of your camera and will protect it from scratches. If you want to pick any of these sets up, I will put a link in the description down below, along with all the other gear used in today's video. The DJI Virtual Flight app is a fantastic simulator. It really helped me learning to fly manually. But if you want to try a different simulator with more maps and courses, then one I really recommend trying is Liftoff. Liftoff is a paid simulator, and although they don't have a DJI Avata model currently, they do have a DJI FPV model which works just as well for building the muscle memory when learning to fly in manual mode. The graphics are really great and there is a ton of maps and tracks to try. From straightforward, easy tracks to much more complicated routes with elevation changes and even gaps you have to fly through. And if you're feeling really competitive, you can even race online. The simulator also replicates damage, such as prop damage by clipping trees, and this teaches you to fly safely instead of just bouncing off obstacles and living to fly another day. Now you can't play Liftoff through your goggles, but you can connect the FPV controller to your computer and use that to control the drone. And this actually might work out better if you find yourself getting motion sick by putting in so many hours training with the goggles. I found doing time trials on Liftoff really helped build my manual mode muscle memory, and if you're looking for an alternative to the DJI Virtual Flight app simulator for a change of maps or tracks, then I really recommend giving the Liftoff simulator a go. Now for the next tip or mistake, I was guilty of doing this in previous videos, and you awesome guys commented to let me know what I was doing wrong and to stop me doing it. And now I want to pass on this knowledge to prevent others from making that same mistake. And that is, don't hold your goggles up towards the sun. The sun can focus through the lenses and can burn the screen, causing permanent damage. This can happen in just a few seconds if the sun is strong enough and you get unlucky. So don't do what I did, I know, fail, and point the goggles up towards the sun. Alright, this tip is super important. I can't stress this enough, as it will save your drone when using Return to Home. If you engage Return to Home by pressing and holding the button on your controller, you lose signal, or your drone battery gets low and the drone engages Return to Home, it will automatically fly back to you. But the drone doesn't have any forward-facing sensors. So if it encounters any objects, such as trees on the way back, it will just fly into them and potentially crash. For that reason, it's super important that you set your Return to Home height higher than those obstacles before you go flying in the safety settings menu, so that the drone rises up and flies over them when Return to Home kicks in. When you're attaching the battery to the goggles, you will notice a little clip on the cable. When inserted fully, this snaps into place, creating a super strong connection. This is so that the cable doesn't accidentally detach when you're flying. It's really important that you make sure this is clipped in place, as if it's not and you keep the battery in your pocket, it could come loose during your flight if you move around a lot. And this will cause your goggles to turn off and you to lose visual on your drone, which wouldn't be very good. It takes a few seconds before each flight, but just make sure it's attached securely and you won't have any problem. Bonus tip time, and this one could genuinely stop you from scratching your Avata. When you're removing the battery, you do so by pressing the two orange tongs together and pulling the battery out of the back of the drone. But sometimes it can be quite tight and require a bit of a tug. Make sure you have the drone held securely when you do that, otherwise you might drop the Avata in the process. So just to be safe, put the drone down in the ground whenever you're removing the battery, and then you don't run any risk of dropping it if it's a little tight to remove. So hopefully these DJI Avata tips and hidden features such as gyro flow help you get more from this drone. If you liked this video, I would love it if you clicked like and subscribe, and you can learn more about drones such as the DJI Avata by clicking here. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.